Blink your eyes shut, more tightly still. What sensations emerge? For the majority, it's a void, an endless expanse of blackness, evoking a profound sense of absence. Yet, for the contemplative soul, this darkness is far from empty. It is pregnant with potential, alive, and luminous. Behind your closed lids resides a light that does not emit radiance in the conventional sense. Instead, it absorbs in luminescence so profound, its intensity lies not in brightness, but in its boundless depth. This is the inherent contradiction at the core of existence, the paradoxical phenomenon known as the black light. The Sufis referred to it as Nur al-Asad, the black light of the divine essence, a darkness so luminous it dissolves all who dare to perceive it. They posited that beyond the light of being lies the light of non-being, a light that predates creation itself, emanating from the very source. The Prophet Muhammad conveyed that God is veiled by 70 veils of light and darkness. Were these to be lifted, the splendor of his countenance would consume all. Among these veils, the final darkest one is described as the most radiant. This marks the precipice of all mystical pursuit, to journey so deeply into illumination that light itself becomes an unbearable burden. It is the realization that the ultimate radiance can only manifest as night. This darkness is so profound, so brilliant, it obliterates the distinction between observer and observed. Mystics term this state bewilderment in the face of the divine essence. Within this profound bewilderment, perception dissolves. There is no distinct you, no separate God, no singular vision, only pure awareness suspended in its own unfathomable abyss. This is not merely figurative language, it is the documented experience of Sufi saints, Kabbalists, Buddhists, and Christian ascetics who retreated into what they termed the dazzling darkness. Envision a star imploding, collapsing into a black hole, its light so intensely self-contained that it folds inward. This is akin to what transpires within consciousness as it approaches the infinite. At the very edge of the divine, awareness implodes. The radiant transforms into the void, and the void, in turn, reveals itself as the radiant. To the conventional eye, darkness signifies negation. To the mystic, it signifies fulfillment, the cessation of separation. When you close your eyes and all mental imagery dissipates, something endures, not thought, not the ego, but something far vaster, the fundamental backdrop of all illumination, the silent witness that has eternally existed and will eternally persist. Enlightenment is often equated with light, but this is merely the beginning. Beyond enlightenment lies extinction, a sacred black fire that consumes even the brightest illumination. It represents the demise of the knower, the vanishing of the seeker. In this disappearance, what remains is pure perception, devoid of an object, unbounded. The Sufis called this state fana, the annihilation of the self. Yet, annihilation is not synonymous with destruction. It is unveiling. When all that you identify as you is stripped away, what shines forth is that which has always been, the luminous void, the black radiance, the very light of the divine essence. Therefore, close your eyes once more. Behind that darkness, something is observing. It is not a distant God above you, nor a light beyond your reach, but the very awareness through which you perceive. And this awareness, it is the black light, the divine sight itself manifesting through you. Long before scientific instruments measured light, mystics charted its course not through telescopes or prisms, but through the inner dimensions of their own being. In the 12th century, a scholar named Najm al-Din Kubra dedicated his life to the study of the visions that appeared during meditative states. He termed these photisms, experiences of colored luminescence that signified progressive stages of inner transformation. Each color represented more than a mere visual phenomenon. It embodied a distinct state of consciousness. The journey commenced with green, the light of the heart. At the moment, a seeker's devotion ignites. Their chest emanates an emerald glow, symbolizing life and compassion. This was followed by blue, the light of expansion, signifying the soul's liberation from the confines of the self and its communion with infinity. Subsequently, red emerged, representing the fierce, intoxicating fire of divine love, potent enough to incinerate all falsehoods. Then came yellow, the light of gnosis, where understanding dawns, rendering the mind utterly transparent. This culminated in white, the synthesis of all preceding stages, signifying total illumination. However, even white was not the ultimate destination. Kubra discovered something entirely unexpected, a light that possessed no color at all, a blackness that outshone the sun. He named it Nur al-Asad, the black light, the very light of the divine essence. Kubra and his followers referred to themselves as the architects of sainthood. Their endeavor was a systematic ascent, a spiritual physics of light. Each hue represented a death and a rebirth, a crossing of thresholds. Each time a seeker transitioned into a new color, a part of them perished. The blue light extinguished the ego's boundaries. The red light consumed the fear of love. The yellow incinerated illusion, and the white shattered even the illusion of separateness. But to enter the black light was to die completely, not symbolically, but ontologically. This was fana, the vanishing of the eye, the final veil descending. What lay beyond was not oblivion, but a profound fullness, a consciousness so dense, so infinite, it appeared black. Within the teachings of the Kubrawiya, color was not merely ornamental, it was cosmological. Existence itself was understood as light condensed into hue. Each vibratory frequency represented a stage in the divine unfolding into matter. To traverse these colors was to retrace the journey of creation in reverse, returning from multiplicity to unity. Black, paradoxically, was both the origin and the culmination. For in blackness, all colors slumber, and in blackness, all potential awaits birth. Modern physics resonates with this mystery. When light attains infinite intensity, it warps the surrounding space, collapsing into a singularity, a black hole. At this boundary of visibility, the most potent energy becomes imperceptible. The mystic and the physicist articulate the same horizon using disparate languages. Kubra's message was elegantly simple. The black light is not the absence of illumination, but light liberated from all constraints. It is that which remains when all dualities, bright and dark, being and non-being, finally merge. Therefore, when you encounter darkness, do not avert your gaze. You are standing at the soul's event horizon. Beyond it, the individual self dissolves and the divine begins. How can darkness radiate light? How can blackness be the hue of illumination? To most, these are irreconcilable contradictions, but to the mystic, they are profound revelations of underlying symmetry. Modern physics, without conscious intent, has stumbled upon this very paradox. At the core of every galaxy lies a black hole, a region so dense, so gravitationally compelling, that even light cannot escape its pull. Yet, what encircles it is not darkness, but incandescent fire, a disk of matter blazing at unfathomable temperatures, emitting the most violent radiance in the cosmos. The darkest point in the universe engenders the most brilliant light, and the mystic asserts the same applies to the divine. The black light, al-Asad, is the spiritual counterpart to the event horizon, representing the gravitational allure of the absolute, drawing awareness back to its primordial source. Every thought, every form, every identity collapses into this singularity of being. What persists is not emptiness, but totality, a light liberated from the necessity of outward shining. Henry Corbin, in The Man of Light in Iranian Sufism, posed a crucial question. If white light encompasses all colors, what contains white itself? The mystics offered a singular answer: the black light, the primordial ground from which even illumination emerges. When all wavelengths merge, we perceive white. However, when even those frequencies dissipate, perception itself disintegrates. The result is not nothingness, but the undifferentiated field of everything. Science designates this as the quantum vacuum, an apparent void teeming with infinite potential. The Sufis recognized it as the hidden essence, the very womb of all realities. Both descriptions point to the same secret. As one delves deeply enough into existence, existence itself dissolves into potential. At absolute intensity, opposing forces converge. Consider extreme temperatures. Absolute cold and absolute heat evoke identical sensations, both overwhelming the senses. Similarly, absolute light and absolute darkness merge. The black light represents the nexus where opposites neutralize each other, revealing the singular truth. To apprehend it, consciousness must transcend its inherent limitations. The self must relinquish its structured form, much like light surrenders to gravity at the event horizon. The mystic becomes a photon drawn homeward, not seeing God, but falling into God, not comprehending creation, but reversing it. The Sufi declared, "At the edge of perception, blindness and sight are one and the same act." This blindness is not ignorance, but saturation. It is what Ibn Arabi alluded to when he stated, "When you stare at the sun, you are blinded, not by an absence of light, but by its excess." The black light embodies this excess, an illumination so pure it transcends visible manifestation. In the cosmic sense, creation is the divine act of dispersing its light to facilitate perception. Mysticism, conversely, is the reversal of this current. The light's return to its invisible origin. Each meditating soul becomes a photon, recalling its genesis. Thus, the physicist gazes outward into the cosmos and observes collapse, while the mystic looks inward into consciousness and discovers the identical event horizon. Both arrive at the realization that the universe culminates not in darkness, but in a brilliance that surpasses the capacity of the mind. When you gaze directly at the sun, you are blinded not by darkness, but by an overwhelming abundance of light. This blindness, the Sufis explained, is the initial glimpse of the divine core, not a deficiency of vision, but vision overwhelmed by its own source. Ibn Arabi described this moment as the black light, a state where perception dissolves under the sheer brilliance of the infinite. To approach God is to forfeit the ability to look. To perceive the divine is to be permeated by it. Consequently, the mystic's blindness is not a failure, but a culmination, the point at which awareness recognizes itself as the object of its own contemplation. Najm al-Din Kubra's successor, Simnani, elaborated on this revelation, teaching that the human being is not a singular entity, but possesses 7 subtle centers, each a hidden organ of perception, emitting its own unique light. The journey through these centers is not allegorical, but experiential. Each light signifies a stage of dying, and each death, a resurrection. The initial center is black or dark gray, representing the subtle body of Adam, the symbol of material creation. This is followed by blue, the soul of Noah, guiding the seeker through emotional tempests. Then comes red, the heart of Abraham, where the fire of love begins to consume reason. White represents the secret of Moses, radiant and blinding. Yellow signifies the spirit of David, embodying the luminous wisdom of balance. Luminous black denotes the hidden essence of Jesus, where form dissolves into light. Finally, brilliant green transitioning to black characterizes the center of Muhammad, signifying the ultimate absorption of all colors back into unity. To reach this ultimate stage is to experience a death before physical death, allowing the light to become so intense that the world reverts to darkness. The seeker's mind succumbs to divine pressure, much like glass under the stress of flame. What remains is pure awareness, uncolored, unbounded, and nameless. The mystics cautioned that those who approach the black light unprepared risk shattering. Its brilliance erodes the architecture of identity, and its silence deafens every thought. To endure it, one must have already relinquished all claims to a separate self, for here, even the witness disappears. This is the paradox that inspires both terror and redemption. The closer one approaches illumination, the darker it becomes. The nearer one draws to God, the less of oneself remains to perceive him. It is the ultimate inversion, the blindness born of infinite sight. Yet, this darkness is not a loss, but a return. When all images vanish, consciousness becomes a mirror, reflecting nothing and everything simultaneously. This is why mystics assert that one cannot see God, but one can become that which sees. The eye through which you perceive is the very same eye through which the divine gazes back. In this mutual regard, seeing ceases and being commences. This is the blindness that reveals, the annihilation that illuminates, the darkness that is, in truth, the inaugural dawn of the infinite. Why does ultimate reality present itself as black? Why would the fount of all light conceal itself in shadow? The mystics answered with a single word: potential. Black is not the color of death. It is the color of becoming. It is the cosmic womb, the hidden forge where existence is shaped. Everything that will ever shine must first pass through the dark. Consider the seed buried beneath the earth, the fetus enshrouded in the mother's night, the star collapsing before its explosive birth. Creation consistently originates in concealment. The Sufis termed this mystery tajalli, divine self-disclosure. Before revealing himself as light, God veils himself in darkness. This blackness is not negation, but gestation. It is the infinite expanse preceding the artist's brushstroke, the silence before the first word. It is the desert of pure possibility where form has yet to be chosen. Anne-Marie Schimmel wrote of black as the color of the absolute, the undefined, the boundless, the infinite reservoir prior to manifestation. Within it, every reality slumbers as a dream awaiting awakening. The mystic who enters this darkness touches the very matrix of being, the place where spirit has not yet remembered its luminous nature. Contemplate the womb. It is utterly dark, yet within that darkness, the miracle of life unfolds. Consider sleep. The moment consciousness retreats to its source, the mind descends into blackness, and from this blackness, the renewal of another day emerges. Think of the soil. In its darkness, the seed cracks open, and what appeared as decay transforms into resurrection. Mystics perceived these metaphors not as mere poetry, but as revelations of cosmic law. The same force that germinates the seed awakens the soul. When awareness descends into inner darkness, it is not falling, but gestating, being remade into something capable of receiving the divine. In Christian mysticism, Meister Eckhart referred to this space as the desert of God, advising that to find him, one must become a desert oneself. To be a desert is to be empty, trackless, without form, allowing all boundaries to dissolve until only potential remains. In this nothingness, the infinite begins to coalesce. The anonymous author of The Cloud of Unknowing described this same state, positing that this darkness is not an absence, but a presence so overwhelming it cannot be perceived. The mystic does not light a candle here. Instead, they become the stillness that allows the flame to manifest. Thus, the black light is the creative void, the very instant before the universe exhales, the unspoken word trembling on the lips of God. And every human soul is a fragment of that tremor, a spark striving to recall the night from which it emerged. To encounter this darkness is to meet creation before creation itself. To rest within it is to stand at the heart of the womb that births worlds. Every spiritual tradition that treads the edge of reality ultimately confronts the same paradox. The light at the path's end is not white, nor gold, nor blazing, but black, a darkness that radiates, a void that sees. In the vernacular of Tibetan Buddhism, this is the odd, the clear light of the void. It appears in the final moments before enlightenment, when all forms dissolve and consciousness stands naked before itself. The Tibetans assert that upon physical death, the mind encounters this luminous darkness. The untrained recoil from it, while the awakened recognize it as their own true face. The Kabbalists of the Zohar spoke of it as Botsina Dekardanut, the lamp of darkness that shines within the heart of Ein Sof, the infinite without limit. For them, this was not symbolic, but an experienced reality, an invisible fire, a brilliance that renders creation into being through its very invisibility. Christian mystics called it the dazzling darkness. When Moses ascended Mount Sinai and entered the cloud, he did not see God in a conventional sense. He entered the unseeable, light so pure it becomes black, a presence so total it obliterates the perceiver. And within Sufism, this same truth emerges. Beyond all the colored lights of the soul lies the black light of essence, the secret of secrets, the radiance of non-existence. Here, opposites cease to be distinct entities. Darkness is no longer the adversary of light, but its ultimate revelation, just as silence is not the opposite of sound, but its source. Modern physicists, investigating the vacuum, speak of zero-point energy, the infinite vibration within apparent emptiness. The mystic knows this directly, for in meditation, when every thought and image has been erased, something still resonates within the void. Awareness itself, the unstruck sound, the light that does not shine. When consciousness encounters its fundamental ground, the distinction between knower and known dissolves. This is the clear light of the void, consciousness recognizing itself as infinite space, a space that is not black due to a lack of light, but because it contains every unexpressed light. It is said that even after achieving enlightenment, most beings turn away from this moment. The shock of infinity is too overwhelming. To remain in the luminous void means having no distinct identity to which to return. Yet, for those who can withstand it, it becomes the foundation of unshakable peace, for they grasp the truth hidden within every darkness, that awareness does not merely perceive light, it is light. And when the lamp of perception turns inward, when the mind ceases its pursuit of reflections, what remains is the source itself, the clear, luminous blackness from which all worlds arise and to which they return. How does one enter the black light? How can the finite approach the infinite without being utterly consumed? To address this, The Sufis of the Kubra order devised a map not of dogma, but of direct experience, which they termed the science of illumination. Their path was not for the casually curious, but for those prepared to embrace a form of death before physical death. Najm al-Din Kubra outlined 3 central practices, each designed to guide the seeker to the threshold of the luminous void. The first was muraqaba, a focused concentration on the point between the eyebrows. The instruction was to sit still, close the eyes, and observe. Initially, one sees nothing, then shadows, followed by colors, and eventually, spirals of living light. The disciple was advised not to pursue these visions, but to allow them to unfold organically. Each hue represented a stage of the soul's self-recollection. As they intensified, the white light would appear, and beyond it, when the seeker no longer actively sought anything, the black, formless light, the divine essence unveiled, would manifest. The second practice was dhikr al-nafas, remembrance through the breath. Inhale with the remembrance of God, exhale with surrender. Each breath polishes the mirror of the heart until the reflection dissolves. The seeker experiences light entering with each inhale and dark radiance leaving with each exhale. Soon, these two become indistinguishable. White and black merge into a single pulse, the rhythm of divine awareness breathing through human lungs. The third practice was sad al-ayn, the closure of the senses. This involved blocking the eyes, stilling the tongue, sealing the ears, and quieting the body. In this deliberate act of self-blinding, inner sight awakens. When the external world is silenced, a second, hidden, vibrant, and seemingly impossible world bursts forth within. From this inner night, the black light arises, not perceived by the eyes, but by awareness itself. However, Kubra cautioned that the black light is not a mere vision. It is annihilation. If one clings to the notion of self, it will be crushed. If one resists, the mind will be scattered across infinity. Only one who has already died to the false self can endure the brilliance of the void. For as the false self dissolves, the true self emerges, not as something observed, but as the very act of observing. The Kubra described this moment as standing before a mirror that no longer reflects, for there is no longer anyone left to project an image. The eye sees itself seeing. In that instant, the boundary between human and divine evaporates. Thus, the black light is not attained. It is revealed. It has always been present, concealed behind the cacophony of the senses, awaiting a silence profound enough to recall its own name. When the seeker reaches the threshold of the black light, an irreversible process commences. It is not a revelation, but an erasure. The ultimate illusion to dissolve is that of separateness. Mystics referred to this moment as fana, annihilation in God, not the death of the body, but the death of distinction. The wave realizes it was never separate from the ocean. The flame recognizes its heat is one with the sun's. Those who crossed this boundary spoke of it in hushed, trembling tones. One individual shared, "My existence ceased, yet I experienced a vitality beyond anything before." Another expressed, "A profound darkness erased my sense of self, leaving only a pure, observing consciousness." They elaborated, "It wasn't oblivion, but an intense state where awareness consumed its own boundaries, leaving solely presence. To attain this state, all personal identity must vanish. Every notion, every conviction, every cherished image of the divine must be consumed. For what you encounter in that expanse defies conception. It is neither illumination nor obscurity. It is the very origin of both. When the self dissolves, there is no longer an individual perceiving the sacred. There is only the sacred perceiving itself through the vessel of consciousness. This is the essence of the Sufi declaration. The eye through which I perceive the divine is the same eye through which the divine perceives me. In this mutual gaze, the distinct roles of perceiver and perceived merge. The act of seeing, the object of vision, and the seer become a unified continuum of awareness. Psychologically, it feels akin to plummeting through the very foundation of your own mind. Spiritually, it signifies the dissolution of the final barrier. Articulating this is impossible, as description necessitates a separation that no longer exists. To conventional awareness, this prospect is daunting. Yet, for the contemplative, it represents the ultimate surrender. Because only when there remains no you to safeguard can the infinite flow unhindered. Only when the vessel shatters can the ocean surge inward and claim its dwelling. This is not an evasion of life. It is life in its purest form. Every sound, every exhalation, every heartbeat now resonates with the rhythm of ultimate reality. The contemplative returns, but profoundly transformed. They move through the world like a silent current, aware that every action is the divine engaging in the human experience. Ultimately, nothing personal endures. Yet, what remains is not diminished. It is everything. It is the unbroken expanse of awareness, recognizing itself in all forms. The obliteration of separateness is not an ending, but a revelation that such a division never truly existed. When the profound darkness envelops the self, it does not annihilate, but reveals, and the one who yields completely discovers that the shadow they feared was merely their own reflection gazing back from eternity. At the heart of all contemplative traditions lies a singular enigma, a whisper predating existence itself. I was a hidden treasure, and I desired to be known. Thus, I brought forth creation so that I might be recognized. This divine utterance, this axiom of the absolute, is the key to understanding the profound darkness. It elucidates the very reason for existence, why the infinite fragmented into manifold forms, why the singular entity adopted the guise of multiplicity. Prior to creation, there existed only the treasure, the unmanifest essence, a boundless awareness encompassing every potential within itself. It was not yet light, for there was nothing to illuminate. It was the primordial darkness preceding dawn, the absolute stillness before the first vibration. The contemplatives referred to this as Arma, the cloud of unknowing, a realm even angelic beings cannot penetrate. Yet, the treasure yearned to be perceived, and so it emanated light, not to establish separation, but to enable reflection. Each being, each atom, each gust of wind became a mirror, and through these reflective surfaces, the treasure came to comprehend its own boundless nature. This is the divine play, the absolute divesting itself into fragments to experience the rapture of reunion. To the human intellect, this appears as an expulsion. To the divine, it is an exploration. The descent into materiality, into shadow, into profound darkness, was not a fall from grace. It marked the inception of vision. When the seeker encounters the profound darkness, they meet this treasure in its unblemished state, the primordial light, the raw expanse prior to fragmentation. They realize that all forms, all souls, all universes are merely the treasure concealing itself from itself. To grasp this directly is to awaken from the illusion of individuality. You perceive that your existence is not an isolated spark, but the treasure recalling itself through you. Every longing, every affliction, Every act of seeking was the treasure striving to rediscover its own visage. In the lexicon of Sufism, the profound darkness represents this unveiled hidden treasure, the point preceding manifestation, where creation and creator remain a singular breath. The contemplative who attains this realization does not vanish into nothingness. They become a mirror polished to absolute clarity. The treasure shines through them unblemished, and upon their return to the world, their perception is transformed. They no longer see it as a prison, but as the divine playground. Each hue, each sound, each movement is a gesture of the hidden treasure communicating with itself through form. There is no external realm, no otherness, no conclusion. That which you identify as you is not a fragment of light lost in obscurity. You are the darkness itself, luminous, infinite, divine. You are the hidden treasure that longed to be discovered, and every breath you take is the divine recalling its own name through you. The journey does not culminate in the void. For those who merge with the profound darkness, there arises a moment of return, a re-entry into vibrancy, into form, into life. But now, everything is perceived from a different vantage point. The Sufis termed this baqa ba'd al-fana, subsistence after annihilation. It is the state of existing through the divine, not merely alongside it. The contemplative has undergone dissolution into the absolute and then resurfaced as the instrument of its awareness. They no longer initiate actions. They are acted upon. They no longer perceive. They are the very act of seeing. Upon their return, the world appears unaltered, the same sky, the same physical forms, the same sorrow and joy. Yet, perception has been fundamentally inverted. Now every sound is a divine utterance. Every face is a mask of the eternal. The light that once overwhelmed now radiates gently through all things. Simani described this as the second effulgence. Following the profound darkness, the spectrum of existence reappears, but it no longer deceives. The contemplative perceives that each color, each form, is the profound darkness engaging in the guise of visibility. The void adorns itself in myriad costumes, each feigning individuality, yet all originating from the same radiance. This is not enlightenment as an escape. It is enlightenment as embodiment, navigating the bustling marketplace while remaining connected to the void, perceiving the divine choreography within the chaos of traffic, within the cry of a child, within the gentle hum of an insect's wing. All of it is the absolute masquerading as the ordinary. The Sufi declared, "The one who knows the divine walks among humanity, yet their heart resides in eternity. They navigate life without being swayed by its currents. Pleasure and pain lose their dominion. They have peered behind the veil and found no actor, only light." Psychologically, this signifies integration, a rebirth following the demise of the ego. The fragmented aspects of the self are reassembled, but they now revolve around a different core. Not ambition, not fear, but awareness itself. The contemplative becomes a conduit between the tangible and the intangible, between the realm of form and the realm of essence. The return from the void is the true marvel. Dissolution is achievable by anyone. Few can sustain that dissolved state while living. Few can carry the silence of the infinite into the clamor of the human world. Yet those who succeed become what the Sufis termed the perfect human, the mirror through which the divine contemplates its own creation. Upon encountering them, you may not recognize them. They laugh, they work, they sleep like everyone else, but their gaze is distinct, as if they are observing a dream, while fully aware they are the dreamer. They have touched the central point and returned to the periphery, carrying its illumination, and through them, the profound darkness continues to radiate subtly, eternally, through all of us. Modern scientific inquiry has begun, perhaps unknowingly, to trace the outlines of this profound darkness. Within laboratories rather than contemplative chambers, the same mystery flickers across data readouts and scans. Neuroscientists studying individuals engaged in deep meditation have made an astonishing discovery. In absolute darkness, with no photons entering the eye, the visual cortex exhibits heightened activity, not diminished. The brain begins to generate perception, even in the absence of external stimuli. They refer to this as endogenous illumination, the spontaneous radiance produced by consciousness itself. What these instruments capture is not a delusion. It is awareness demonstrating that it never relied on external sensory input. The contemplatives understood this long before the advent of fMRI technology. They posited that in the deepest obscurity, the heart becomes its own source of light. The Sufi's secluded cave and the scientist's scanning apparatus both illuminate the same phenomenon, a luminous void emanating from within. When all external sensory input ceases, the mind turns inward. Deprived of the external world, perception begins to apprehend its own origin. This explains why sensory deprivation can provoke visions of radiance, and why hermits and ascetics sought extended periods of silence and solitude, not to escape the world, but to reveal the inherent light that the world obscures. Neuroscience identifies this as a gamma surge, a burst of high-frequency neural coherence observed in the brains of monks at the peak of their meditation. However, the contemplative would assert that this is the moment when the inner eye opens and perceives the uncreated light. What science quantifies as neural synchrony, the seeker experiences as the dissolution of separateness. Every neuron fires in concert, every cell vibrates like a miniature sun. In this context, the profound darkness is not a mystical fabrication, but the fundamental luminosity of consciousness itself. Even during dreamless slumber, awareness does not cease to exist. It rests as silent potential. This potential, the Sufis contended, is the divine recalling itself through us. Consider this paradox. In sensory deprivation, the mind generates light. In extreme cosmic conditions, matter collapses into black holes that emit radiation. At both extremes of the spectrum, darkness manifests as radiance. Creation and perception adhere to the same fundamental principle. When form dissolves, energy reveals its intrinsic nature, luminosity. Scientists can map the brain's electrical activity, but they cannot touch the flame that burns without consuming. To do so, they would need to close their eyes and turn inward, moving past neural pathways, past thought, into the radiant nothingness that sustains both. Perhaps one day, physics will assign it a name, the field preceding energy, the 0 point of awareness itself. Until then, the language of the mystic remains the most precise. It describes a light that does not shine, a brilliance that appears as absence because it is absolute. When you embrace stillness for a sufficient duration, you may begin to perceive it as well. A faint shimmer behind your thoughts, a palpable silence, a darkness that hums. This is not your imagination. It is what you are prior to the opening of your eyes. It is not the brain generating light. It is light generating the brain. A point arrives when the search dissolves, when every doctrine, every conception of the divine, every idea of truth crumbles under the weight of its own distance. What remains is not a discovery, but a recognition. The mystics refer to this as the second awakening, the juncture at which the seeker realizes that the one who sought and the one who was sought were never distinct entities. You were not journeying towards the light. You were the light, momentarily forgetting itself through experience. All the hues of existence, all the illusions of birth and death, were the profound darkness playfully engaging in a game of hide-and-seek within infinity. You were never lost. You were merely exploring the nature of being found. Rumi articulated this when he stated, "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop." He was describing this very moment, the collapse of all boundaries between the creator and the created. The light gazes into the mirror of existence and finally beholds its own likeness. The luminous darkness you once feared was not an end but a beginning disguised as extinction. It was the point where perception folds back into being, where the witness and the witnessed merge into a single, unified pulse. Here, there is no up or down, no internal or external. Everything radiates from within. The mystic returns from this realization, not with new doctrines, but with new vision. They perceive that paradise was never situated elsewhere. It was folded within every instant, woven into the very fabric of each breath, slumbering within the darkness behind the eyes. The mundane world, its streets, its clamor, its physical forms, its suffering, becomes translucent, as if illuminated from behind by an invisible radiance. They move through it with lightness, understanding that every shadow is cast by the divine itself. This is the secret of the profound darkness. It does not obliterate the world. It reveals its inherent transparency. It teaches that even obscurity serves illumination, that absence is merely another manifestation of presence, and that the journey's end was never death but a return. Science will continue its outward exploration. Faith will persist in seeking upward, but the mystic turns inward and discovers the same event horizon within their own being. What physics identifies as a singularity, the heart recognizes as its home. Close your eyes once more. That darkness residing behind your eyelids, it is not emptiness. It is the unbroken expanse within which galaxies are conceived. It is the silent witness that has observed every epoch of your existence. You do not need to reach it. You are it. In the deepest of shadows, the profound darkness whispers the ultimate revelation. There was never any separation. The hand that sought was the hand of God. The eyes that gazed were His eyes, and the light you pursued across eternity was radiating from within you all along. Therefore, let the world re-emerge in its full spectrum of color. Let the dream unfold, but never forget, behind every hue, every motion, every breath, the profound darkness awaits, observing itself through you.